Hey there, everyone. I am Lana Zach in for Vladimir Duthier. We are watching all of the news that's happening in the U.S. and around the world. Underwater and in the dark, parts of Louisiana drenched and damaged after Francine lashed into the state as a Category 2 hurricane. A trio of fires scorching hundreds of thousands of acres across Southern California. We're going to go there as crews battle the intensifying flames. And mission accomplished. Thousands of feet high above the earth, private citizens conducted the first ever commercial spacewalk. What this historic moment means for the future of space travel. This is CBS News 24/7. Hey there, we are going to start with Francine because parts of Louisiana are underwater. Nearly 400,000 people are in the dark this morning recovering from the powerful storm. Francine slammed into the state as a Category 2 hurricane last night. It made landfall in Terrebonne Parish, impacting communities along the Gulf Coast, including New Orleans. More than 300,000 people are still without power in the worst hit areas of southeastern Louisiana. And the storm is now making its way across the southeast, impacting thousands across Mississippi. Joining me now with the latest is CBS News correspondent Dave Malkoff. Dave, we saw you nearly blown away last night. What's the situation like in Houma this morning?
Yeah, this is a building that has been torn apart, Lana. This is a corrugated roof right here. I put this pillow here just to make sure that nobody slices their head on this. I have the gloves after a storm like this. But let me tell you what this business is. This is called the Junk in the Trunk. It's called the Junk in the Trunk thrift store, but it's very serious for this neighborhood because it's maybe the most affordable place for anybody in this neighborhood to shop. And they can get all these products here. And now it's gone. Now, the roof was just torn apart. You can see how it's just kind of peeled back like an old-fashioned sardine can. You can see back there, there is a brick wall that's torn down. All of the drywall is down, and all of these items that are so important to not only the business owner, but the people in this neighborhood, they're all exposed to the elements. Now it is a rush, Lana, to just get everything into the box truck.
And Dave, you know, whenever you cover these types of things, it is always so devastating to see people as they witness their belongings strewn about. What are the biggest concerns there right now?
The biggest concern is the reason why we put the pillow up there, the reason why I'm wearing these work gloves, because after a storm, Lana, is the most dangerous part of a natural disaster. So after the natural disaster, people start cleaning up and they get hit by something like this. Look at how very sharp that is. That's kind of razor sharp thing. So if you're walking through and you're not looking, you can scrape your head wound, lots of blood. This is the owner of the store right here. It's really, really tough for you because these are your customers, right?
That is my favorite customer right there.
That's her favorite customer.
Favorite customer. Hey, you. She's the sweetest.
Oh, yeah.
She's from the neighborhood.
Mrs. Stevens is here, and she loves this store. So do the people in this neighborhood, but it's going to take a long time to clean up. Not only after this hurricane. Look, she found a couple of DVDs back there, Lana.
It's the same. Look, see all those movies? That's
Yeah, so not only after this hurricane, but also after a hurricane that was just 3 years ago. Oh, Dan the Junk Man is coming through. Dan the Junk Man is coming through. What are you saving? Oh, he's picking out stuff that he can.
Vases.
Yeah, those are vases. Those are vases. Those are not for any other purpose, but being vases. Whoops! And I actually hit my head on that. Yeah, I'm fine.
We want everybody to be careful there.
But yeah.
So we'll check back in with you as they're all continuing to go through and get about their day there. Real quick, Dave, is the storm moving out now? When is the power expected to get back on?
Well, the power will not get back on actually here in Houma because, as I was about to say, we went through a hurricane just 3 years ago that was a Cat 4, maybe even possibly in a Cat 5 region. But it took out the power station here, and they have been on generator power, according to the parish president that we talked to yesterday. They have these generators lined up there, so if they need to run the power plant, they have to fire up the generators. They are still fighting. The parish is still fighting with the insurance company to get those power plants back on because they just don't have the money to do it right now. Now they're freeing up federal funds and state funds and local funds.
All right, Dave Malkoff, thank you. Well, the South is dealing with water. The West is dealing with flames. Firefighters in Southern California are dealing not just with one, but 3 major wildfires in what has been a non-stop week. The bridge fire east of Los Angeles has forced the evacuation of 10,000 people. Several firefighters are recovering from injuries sustained in the fast-growing line fire in the San Bernardino National Forest, and the airport fire in Orange and Riverside counties has scorched several homes. CBS Los Angeles reporter Cara Finstrom has been tracking the airport fire. Cara, it seems like crews made some progress over the last few days. Any word on how the airport wildfire started?
No, we are still trying to learn a little bit more about all of these fires. The airport fire, though, which started over in San Bernardino County, actually was triggered, they believe, by some work crews that were doing some work and accidentally started that fire. But take a look at this. We've moved over to the Riverside County side, and a gift from Mother Nature today. That's fog behind us mixed in with the smoke, and that is really cooling things down here. And great news for firefighters. Some folks in this community have lost homes. Others have been evacuated from charred neighborhoods. Let's go to some video that we shot here yesterday. Many folks heading to Red Cross shelters that have been set up here to get food and to get resources. The airport fire did devastate El Carrizo Village, a mountain community here of about 60 homes. No official count yet as to how many houses were destroyed, but our crew saw that at least 16 have been leveled. We've also had 10 firefighters, 2 civilians injured. We spoke with one woman who says the home she was living in burned, and she's lost everything.
We're telling us, you need to go, and you need to go now. The flames are close. So I still hesitated. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave my home.
So tough to hear. Now, fire officials say fire cop helicopters have made a huge difference here. At last report, this fire estimated to be 5% contained. Those numbers are expected to go up, and firefighters are still cutting those fire lines around this fire, hoping to really fully contain it, taking advantage of this break in the weather.
Well, good that Mother Nature is helping out. Cara, thank you. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with a first look at the national forecast. Hey, Grant.
Hey, good morning, Lana. Good morning to you guys at home. We're keeping an eye on those fire conditions over portions of our western states as you head up into areas of like Colorado, Wyoming, and even into the Dakotas where we have that critical fire danger today. So watching for those gusty conditions along with some thunderstorms that are pushing to the east. But in some cases, those thunderstorms are dry. So lightning could spark a fire. And with the dry and breezy conditions, we'll have to watch out for some fire out there towards the plain states, the high plains up into the Rockies. Meanwhile, Francine just dumped a lot of rainfall over the last 24 hours. Portions of Louisiana seeing nearly 10 inches of rain, in some cases 9 inches of rain in Mandeville. We'll continue to see that heavy rainfall, but right when it made landfall, 5 o'clock Central Time yesterday, we were seeing some impressive wind gusts. Category 2 hurricane at landfall yesterday afternoon. 112-mile-per-hour winds reported there at Burns Point. Now, Francine weakened as it moved inland. It is now a tropical depression as it's moving through Mississippi this morning, but just look at all of that heavy rainfall moving through northern Mississippi, but also into Alabama today, where we're going to have a concern for some flash flooding, which there's ongoing flash flood concerns. The center of Francine will stay right there over the Mississippi Valley as it continues to drop very heavy rainfall. We have that enhanced threat for flash flooding there, actually a moderate risk there through northern Alabama into the Birmingham area, but also that threat for flooding continues to the south and east into portions of southern Georgia and the panhandle of Florida. Speaking of the panhandle of Florida, all that onshore wind coming in on the southeastern side of Francine is going to produce a threat for some tornadoes today. So from the panhandle of Florida, pretty much right through the central part of Alabama, we'll have to watch out for those quick spin-up tornadoes. There's Francine, but then there's also Tropical Depression 7. That's a non-issue, but it may become Tropical Storm Gordon over the next couple of days. Also watching a potential development of tropical weather right there off the southeastern coast, something that we'll monitor as we go into the weekend. Lana, back to you for now.
All right, thanks, Grant. Well, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is meeting with senior Polish government officials this morning in Warsaw after spending yesterday in Kyiv, Ukraine, where he met with Volodymyr Zelensky. Our Olivia Gazis is with the secretary today and asked him this morning about his discussions with Ukrainian officials.
We had good and extensive discussions with our Ukrainian colleagues yesterday about how they see the battlefield, what their needs are, and as I've said, we will always continue to take that into account, and as necessary, we'll adapt, we'll adjust in terms of what we're doing.
Olivia's traveling with the secretary, so I want to bring in CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams. Holly, we know Ukraine wants to use long-range American-supplied missiles to strike inside Russia. The U.S. so far hasn't allowed that. What concerns does the U.S. have about that potential action?
Good morning, Lana. Well, look, the U.S. fear throughout this war, despite supporting Ukraine, has been that if you give Ukraine the wrong type of weapon or more powerful weapons or allow the Ukrainians to use them inside Russia, is that it could be escalatory. That is, that it could turn the war in Ukraine into a bigger, more dangerous conflict. So some of the long-range weapons that the U.S. has supplied to Ukraine, for instance, ATACMS, they've been happy for the Ukrainians to use them against Russian forces inside Ukraine. Remember, Russia currently controls around 20% of Ukraine's territory, but not inside Russia. However, that said, when Ukraine back in August launched its incursion into southern Russia, the biggest foreign incursion into Russia since World War II, reportedly using some US-supplied weapons, the reaction from the White House was to say, you know, if Vladimir Putin's uncomfortable with that, there's an easy solution. Putin can just quote, get the hell out of Ukraine. And then more recently, we heard from the CIA Director William Burns, who recently called that incursion a, quote, significant tactical achievement. So it certainly appears that the US is becoming more and more comfortable with the Ukrainians taking the fight into Russia. Now, the Ukrainian argument for the incursion, and presumably for being allowed to use long-range weapons in Russia, or US-supplied long-range weapons in Russia, is that it potentially does a few things. It may weaken Putin domestically. It may force Russia to divert forces from the front line in Ukraine to protect their own homeland. And it may also provide Ukraine with a bargaining chip in any future negotiations, whereby Ukraine could say, you know, you give us back that bit of our country and we'll give you back this bit of yours. Lana.
All right. Holly Williams, thank you. Well, history has been made more than 400 miles above the Earth. The first ever private commercial spacewalk is now complete. The four-person mission was led by billionaire tech CEO Jared Isaacman and lasted about 2 hours. CBS News space analyst Bill Harwood has more on the Polaris Dawn mission. Bill, we know the crew was testing the durability of new space suits. That's particularly important for the potential for Mars. Walk us through what actually happened this morning.
Yeah, you know, it was really a straightforward thing. You know, the two astronauts, Jared Isaacman, as you said, the billionaire who financed this mission, and a woman named Sarah Gillis, she works for SpaceX. You know, they floated out through the forward hatch of the capsule and exposed themselves to space. And really, they just stood there and moved around. You know, they'd moved their arms a bit, and they were testing the mobility of the suit, how the joints work and all of that. And it might not have looked all that impressive to somebody that's been watching, you know, space station spacewalks for a long time, where they do very complicated things for hours and hours. But it was a major step forward for SpaceX. You know, as you said, they're trying to perfect these suits. They think someday, and maybe take this with a grain of salt, but they're envisioning a day when they're going to need hundreds, if not thousands, of these spacesuits for people traveling to the moon and Mars and out into the solar system. So it was a modest first step, but I think it was a significant first step for SpaceX.
I thought it was pretty impressive. I also was really interested, Bill, in the fact that they had to drain the air for the astronauts who were inside the capsule, who didn't actually get to do the spacewalk. So talk to us about what's next then for the crew, the return mission, and how this all impacts the future of space travel.
Well, first of all, those other two people that were in the cabin, they go in the books as the spacewalkers too. Because the cabin was exposed to vacuum. They don't have an airlock in the Crew Dragon capsule. So when they open that hatch, the entire spacecraft's at vacuum. No, that has. They did that back in the Apollo program, coming back from the moon. They would open a hatch and go out and retrieve film canisters, things like that.
For a private organization.
No, for a private, right. And this is the very first time 4 people have been in vacuum in spacesuits at the same time. So a lot of firsts in this mission. But to look ahead, the rest of this mission is devoted to science. They've got experiments on board from more than 30 institutions, mostly biomedical research, learn more about how the body adapts and is affected by weightlessness. They're going to be doing that for the remainder of the flight. And, if all goes well, they'll splash down off the coast of Florida sometime this weekend. Don't have an exact time yet, but it's about a 5-day mission. So they'll be coming down over the weekend. And I think the SpaceX employees on the ground are going to be really happy to get them home.
I'm sure. And Bill, you and I are going to talk about this more at that time. Always appreciate talking space with you. Thanks. Well, entering a new phase on the trail coming up, what we are learning about Vice President Kamala Harris's new aggressive campaign strategy. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. New economic data released this morning shows wholesale prices rose 0.2% last month. This data is in line with estimates from Dow Jones economists, which show the economy is cooling. The Producer Price Index is another crucial inflation gauge that the Federal Reserve monitors. The Fed will meet next week, where they are expected to announce that they are in fact cutting interest rates. Well, the Harris campaign plans to enter a more aggressive phase on the campaign trail in hopes of building momentum on Tuesday's debate. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes is following the vice president on the trail today. So, Nancy, walk our audience through this new strategy from the Harris campaign.
Right. They are just coming right out and saying that she is moving into an aggressive new phase. And what that translates into, Lana, is that the pace of her campaign appearances is going to pick up now that the debate and the convention are behind her. So here in North Carolina, for example, she's doing 2 rallies, one here in Charlotte, then another in Greensboro. Then she's heading to Pennsylvania for another couple of events tomorrow. They're sensitive to the fact that both in 2020 and in 2016, the Democratic nominees, both President Biden and Hillary Clinton, were hit by Republicans for not doing more campaign events. And so she's looking to sort of set the standard here that she is going to be out on the trail more now that she has more time. But it's not just campaign appearances. They say that they're also going to be cutting a slew of new ads using clips from the debate on Tuesday. The first of those ads is being released today. And they say she's going to be doing more local media interviews in these battleground states, again, to sort of push back on the accusation by former President Donald Trump in particular, that she is not doing many media interviews.
All right, Nancy, thank you. Well, just moments ago, New York's highest court dismissed former President Trump's effort to appeal the gag order in his hush money criminal trial. The former president is on the campaign trail in Arizona today, and that is where we find CBS News campaign reporter Olivia Rinaldi. So, Olivia, what do we expect from the former president's address, and how might this be different from his recent address on the border?
Yeah, good morning, Lana. It's Trump's second visit to Arizona in recent weeks. It really just underscores how important this state is heading into November. And Trump will be here later today in Tucson. On his last visit, he went about 2 hours south towards Cochise County, where he was talking about immigration. But the focus today is going to be on the economy and rising housing prices. Now, Arizona during the pandemic saw an explosion in population. So many people are moving here. You've got beautiful views behind me. I can totally see why. But coming here, it really skyrocketed some high housing prices, along with that rising population. So it's really been the epicenter of some of these high prices we've seen in housing affordability across the country. So Trump will be back here today to really underscore that, and he heads out west later this week for more of a campaign swing.
All right, Olivia, thank you.
can see each of those apartments.
Some breaking news in right now. Police in Colorado are responding to what they're calling an active shooter in the Denver area. We're going to toss over to coverage from CBS News Colorado.
And, several winding roads through there, as well as right up against Arista Park, where police have been staging. And you can see quite a few people with guns kind of moving through that area to make sure that this area is secure for the folks who live in and around. Again, this is just a very quiet neighborhood. A lot of homes. As you look around, there are just a couple of restaurants in that area, but right adjacent to Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport is off to the west there with their runways and their planes, and that's where we store our copter, and they were able to launch and get right over that scene fairly quickly. But as you kind of zoom out into the area, there's nothing in that specific area that would be of super high concern, like a elementary school. I'm not seeing any of those around here. I could be wrong. Those are some of the things that we try and look out for first to make sure that everybody in that area is safe. Again, US 36 runs right along there, and you can see Highway 128 along here, which is 120th. That'll connect you out to I-25, and then right along here you have Wadsworth, and this is the area that we're talking about. You got the UC Broomfield Hospital, and just to the south of that is where we have this active shooter. I want to show you what police are telling us. You can see that they're on the scene of an active shooting, that they have notified the residents to shelter in place. They are working on putting together a media staging area for us. They are hoping that we can stay back before descending onto that scene. But Broomfield Police, they're this emphatic. They're saying this is an active scene, is not safe, and as soon as the area is secured and that has been established by officers, that they'll share that here. But the shots are still being fired, so this is very much an active scene. As we go back over Copter, and they're making their way, it looks counterclockwise, so we're now able to see a little bit farther down the street at what is happening along here. And I'm guessing that this is along Arista Flats here, is along Arista Place that we have Copter over that scene. Right near the Fairfield at Arista, right in that intersection seems to be where everybody is focused right now. You can see some SWAT teams out there and quite a few police officers that are in that area. And you can hear our pilot, that's Nate, who's our pilot for the copter, kind of talking to the desk here. They're being asked to go to a higher elevation, again, to make sure to keep out of the way of police, but able to give us an idea of what is going on. I know this may be a scary situation for those folks who live in that area who have received the reverse notification, but again, reports of shots being actively fired at the Arista Flats apartment building. This is right near US 36 and to Wadsworth, right in the uptown Arista Place area. Copter over the scene. We've got Jeff Todd and photojournalist.
We'll continue monitoring this active shooter situation in Broomfield, Colorado. For now, a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Here's a look at some of the top stories we are following. More than 30,000 Boeing workers in Portland, Oregon, and Seattle are expected to vote today on a potential strike that could shut down production. Union workers are considering their first full comprehensive contract offer in 16 years, but some workers feel like the offer fell short of their demands. Now, if this strike vote prevails, the work stoppage would begin tomorrow. And in Missouri, the federal trial is underway for the 3 former Memphis officers charged in the 2023 beating death of Tyree Nichols. During jarring opening statements yesterday, prosecutors claimed that the suspect stood by Nichols' body and laughed after beating him. They're accused of violating Nichols' civil rights. They've each pleaded not guilty. And moving on to the East Coast, the annual Tribute in Light lit up the New York City skies overnight, marking 23 years since the 9/11 terror attacks. Twin beams of light representing the Twin Towers shine from dusk until dawn, representing New York City's resilience after the attacks. Ceremonies were held in New York, Washington, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania yesterday to remember and honor the victims. Well, tens of thousands of Southern California residents have been forced out of their homes as firefighters battle a trio of massive and dangerous wildfires. Crews rush to rescue people from the airport fire that's raging in Orange and Riverside counties. And that is where we find CBS News senior national and environmental correspondent Ben Tracy. Ben, so many fires raging there at once. What are some of the challenges that crews are up against in battling the airport fire?
Well, that really is one of the big challenges, is that there are so many fires happening at once, and that is really straining resources for CAL FIRE and a lot of these counties here, because all three of the fires you mentioned are basically in the Los Angeles metropolitan area. They're separated by about 50, 60 miles, each one of these fires. Here with the airport fire, firefighters did get the one thing they were really hoping for, a big change in the weather. Temperatures have dropped dramatically. The marine layer came back in this morning. That's moisture from the ocean, and that has really tamped things down here. All we're really seeing now in the distance are kind of, little plumes of smoke of, telephone poles that are still burning, those sorts of things. But the main part of the fire has really died down. And now they can work on containment, kind of getting those containment lines around the fire. But this is only one of the three major fires. And all of these fires cover tens of thousands of acres in steep, rugged terrain. So this is really straining the resources of firefighters trying to battle these things all at once.
And Ben, what do crews need in order to try and get this actually under control that they don't currently have?
Well, the two big things, one is the weather, which I mentioned. The second one is just more resources. The problem is when you have so many fires at once, and this has been a very active wildfire season even prior to the past week, you just really strain resources. So they're bringing in fire crews from out of state. They are training National Guards people to actually be firefighters and join the fire lines. So that kind of shows you how desperate they are for resources. If there is any good news here, this, the heat wave that really fueled so much of this is now over. So the job for firefighters is slightly less grueling because they're now not dealing with 100-degree weather. It's actually been in the high 50s here this morning. So that makes fighting the fires a little bit easier.
Glad to hear that. All right, Ben, thank you. Well, we are tracking Tropical Storm Francine as it continues to move across the southeastern U.S. I want to check back in with CBS News correspondent Dave Malkoff. Dave, when we last talked to you, you were trying to avoid hitting your head on dangerous parts of the roof, but you were also talking to the folks there that are trying to put their lives back together in Houma. What have they been telling you?
There's more people who have arrived here as the sun comes up and they see what happened here. Photojournalist Dwayne Scott showing you how the roof just peeled back. Right walking through your screen is Dan the Junk Man. It's Dan Stevens, and he runs this store. Some of their favorite customers have arrived here, but it looks like they're going to miss those customers because the store is not going to be able to be in this building anymore. And I'll show you why that is, Lana, and everybody watching at home. This is the roof right here. And it has been torn off. Not only did the roof get knocked down, but the drywall, the brick wall, all of that down there is just gone. So what Dan is doing is taking all this stuff and putting it into these boxes, moving it to a different location. But this is a big view of what people are doing in a smaller view inside their homes. They may have had some damage inside their homes. A lot of people were worried about water coming in. That was one of the major problems that they were trying to avoid as we saw this storm approaching in the Gulf of Mexico. It made landfall here just south of us, just southeast of us, as a Category 2 hurricane. And now it has been downgraded to a tropical storm. And Lana, it's really hard to look at all this, right? I mean, what are you thinking when you look at all of this?
I remember all the times that I've covered these sorts of natural disasters and just how your heart breaks for people who are struggling to put it together. And on that, I'm wondering, you were saying before, Dave, that one of the problems that people faced in Houma was a struggle with insurance that was already going on. Is that their biggest concern now? Is that the concern? Is it power outages?
It's all that. This is hurricane number 2 for them in the last 3 years. So they have not finished the insurance process. They haven't finished the cleanup process since the last hurricane in 2021. And you look at all this, you think, oh, well, at some point this will get cleaned up. But that's not the case for natural disasters. Some cities, as we've reported on our Eye on America piece that we did a few months ago, some cities, when they go through tornadoes, fires, hurricanes, floods, sometimes they get wiped off the map because all the jobs go away. And that's the heartbreaking part of all this.
All right, Dave, thank you. Let's go back over to CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore, because, Grant, we were checking in both on the West Coast, and it looks like Mother Nature is cooperating there, but she has really dealt the people of Louisiana a significant blow. Give us a little bit more of what's happening in terms of the national forecast.
You know, Lana, when you look at these hurricanes, typically these major hurricanes, your Cat 3, 4, and 5s, they really do grab a lot of the headlines because of their destructive force when it comes to the wind. And look, Cat 1, Cat 2 hurricanes, they bring a lot of wind too, but all tropical systems bring with them multiple threats. And it's the rainfall threat that really does produce a lot of issues as they move inland and then well beyond the time frame from when they make that landfall. Now, Francine made landfall yesterday afternoon at 5 o'clock Central Time. And I want to show you this. And I know the clouds here are covering up the map, but I think it illustrates an important point. And that is that Francine, while it continues to produce heavy rainfall, it's really spreading its impact all across the southeast. And this system, while it's weakening, will continue to bring that heavy rainfall for a couple of more days. So that's going to be the thing that we watch with this system as we head through Friday into the weekend as well. Now, look, this isn't going to be one of those tropical events, those tropical systems that's going to drop multiple feet of rainfall. But still, when you're talking about rainfall totals more than a half of a foot, that's a lot of rainfall. And that rainfall has to go some places. And ultimately, sometimes that produces the damage that we've seen. And look, now this system did bring a lot of gusty winds as well. I mean, some serious wind speed reports. Burns Point, Louisiana, reported the maximum wind gust that we could find at 112 miles per hour. But even when you're talking about wind speed reports there in East New Orleans at 70 miles per hour, think about when you're going down the interstate at 70 miles per hour. You stick your hand out the window. That's some strong wind. That causes damage. And that's what we saw all along the coast of Louisiana into Mississippi. So here's Francine right now. It is a tropical depression, but it's still producing that very heavy rainfall. We do have concerns for ongoing flash flooding as we go throughout the day, but the center of the storm will stay over the Mississippi Valley today. You notice, though, far removed from the center of the storm is that moderate risk for flash flooding into Alabama. Lana, over to you.
All right, Grant, appreciate it. Thanks. Well, we are less than 2 months away from the presidential election, and state and local officials are warning that Postal Service delays could slow down mail-in voting. And CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland follows all this for us. He's live from Capitol Hill. So, Scott, what was in that letter that officials sent to the Postmaster General, and did it get there in time?
This is a warning to the U.S. Postal Service from this bipartisan group of state election officials or secretaries of state that there's concerns unless there's better staff training or staffing levels, or the U.S. Postal Service can ratchet up its performance metrics, there's a risk some of those mail-in ballots could be delayed too long across states come November. According to these letters released to CBS News, the election officials have alerted that there have been some mailed ballots that have come a little too late at previous elections in recent months. And they're worried this is something that could consist of a problem come November, could perpetuate itself until November. They're alerting the Postal Service to try to jack up the staffing levels or the staff training to prevent this from being a thing in November. I equate it, Lana, to the kid bringing home a bad grade on the midterm report card, and you say, you got to do something to get that grade up before the end of the marking period. Start working on it now.
All right. Well, let's talk about the actual election, because some lawmakers who had pushed for Biden to step aside are now giving feedback on Harris's performance. What are you hearing from Democrats?
There was this wave of Democrats right after the June 27th debate who broke the ice and publicly said President Biden should stand down from the race and that it should be Vice President Harris in particular who takes over at the top of the ticket. One of those is a former Ohio congressman named Tim Ryan. He was the first. We checked in on him this week to see how he thinks his call has gone, and he says in recent days he got a text message from a buddy joking, "When are you going to Vegas, Tim? Because you called this right." Democrats who advocated for Vice President Harris say she has exceeded their expectations, and they had high expectations to begin with, not just in polling numbers, not just in volunteer numbers, but in that debate performance that she acquitted herself so well. It vindicates that historic moment we saw where it was Democrats calling on their own party's nominee to stand down, something we may never see again. Democrats at this moment who were part of that team, Lana, are enjoying a moment in the sun.
All right, Scott, still it's too early to make any predictions on any of that. Appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break. We are monitoring a lot of breaking news headlines, including the possibility of an earthquake. We're going to bring you that on the other side of this break. Stay with us. We are following some breaking news for you. Initial reports of an earthquake in Malibu, 4.7. We're going to dip into coverage from CBS News Los Angeles.
Anything in the house that looks out of place?
No, not that we've found yet. We looked around. I don't think anything's fallen off. It was a quick jolt, but it definitely, you felt a rock for a second. And, you know, it was almost the same time, as I said, as the alert. So you hear the alert and then the jolt. So the two of them really rock you for a second. And then the roll afterward, and once you start feeling that roll, having lived here for a long time, you're wondering, is that roll going to keep going? Or it was a short roll, it was a jolt and a short roll. My wife and I just looked at each other and said, how long is this roll going to go? And it didn't go very long, but obviously, as we know, with aftershocks and everything, we're on alert right now.
Yeah, that is one of those things, right? You start paying attention to. We have SkyCal right now over Malibu. In fact, David, taking a look at the coastline there. It looks like traffic is flowing okay. It doesn't look like this has had much impact on people's daily life. Just kind of a little bit of a surprise this morning. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely something that gets you up in the morning. I'm looking outside, and PCH I could see is open. Doesn't seem to be a problem. There's someone outside walking their dog, one of my neighbors. So, everybody jolt to wake up in the morning if they weren't up already. And, you're on alert now.
Yeah, David, you guys are in Malibu, obviously close to where this quake was centered. You guys haven't felt anything since, like you mentioned earlier, aftershocks can be stronger than the original quake many times.
And we haven't felt anything, but we're looking around the house to see if anything fell or anything like that. But nothing like that yet. It was a short jolt and a roll, but certainly enough to get you moving in the morning.
No doubt. It really just goes to show the closer you are to the fault line, obviously the stronger the jolt. Exactly. David, you're explaining this sharp jolt, whereas we here in Studio City felt a rolling motion, just an ongoing rolling motion. So it just goes to show the destruction that's possible when you are closer on a fault line.
All right, it sounds like our friends in California doing all right there after the reports of a 4.7 earthquake hitting Malibu. We're going to roll from California over to Colorado as we continue to follow that breaking news where police are responding to an active shooter situation at an apartment in Broomfield, Colorado. Let's dip back over into CBS News, Colorado.
To give you a better idea of what is going on. But again, just before 8 o'clock this morning, we had reports of an active situation, an active shooting situation at the Arista Flats apartment. This is on Central Court in Broomfield. They did send out a reverse emergency notification to folks who live in that area to shelter in place, saying that the surrounding area was not safe as well, that shots were still being fired. The police giving that update within the last half hour. They also are telling us that units continue to be in that area and continue to tell folks to shelter in place, that there have been some limited evacuations in and where police are focusing right now, and those limited evacuations are done at this time. They're not going to be evacuating any more folks, so they're asking everybody else to kind of stay in that area. The media is beginning to stage, and hopefully we'll be able to get a few more answers about exactly what is going on at this hour. But you could see, as part of our ground shots from Dale Atchison earlier, that the ambulances from North Metro are on scene and staged and ready to go just in case. Maybe a good sign that they aren't actively loading up anybody and leaving this scene. We have no reports of any injuries at this time, but you can see, folks in SWAT gear that are in this area. This again, a shot from Dale Atchison, who's on the scene as somebody there armed and ready. Is heading back towards that area. We have, again, 2 crews that are on the ground. We have our copter that is in the air. This is off US 36 in Wadsworth, right behind in the shadow.
We will continue to monitor this situation as well as all of the breaking news around the world. We'll bring you the updates as we have them. We'll be right back. One of the hero pilots aboard the Alaska Airlines plane that had that door panel blow out mid-flight is speaking out for the very first time about those terrifying moments. CBS News senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve joins us now from Washington. Chris, the pilot, talked specifically about her interaction with a mother and her young child. What can you tell us about her experience?
Yeah, we were very fortunate to talk with Emily Whiprud, the first officer on Alaska 1282. She tells a harrowing story of the chaos in the cockpit, but also once the plane was safely on the ground, walking out of the flight deck and seeing 177 people staring back at her, including families, parents, and everyone trying to figure out just what it all they survived. Take a listen.
A woman was on the floor. What I later learned to find out was that was the assumed to be mother of the boy who lost his shirt. She looked back, and her son was gone. As a mother myself, I can't even imagine that feeling. She was looking for her son.
And there was also a number of unaccompanied minors, right? And there was a little boy in the back that was just sort of sitting there waiting as people were getting off the plane.
My eyes went across the hole and down to this little boy. And I bent down and I took his hand and I said, "I'm so proud of you. You did so good."
And of course, everybody survived and got off that plane without any serious injuries, which is particularly remarkable when you think about the pictures of the hole in that airplane right next to some seats that just thankfully happened to be empty. Really just a riveting interview. And we talked to her at length about getting back in the cockpit, getting back to flying. She is flying again. I asked her if she has confidence in the 737 after all of this, and she says she does. Alana?
Oh, Chris, incredible. Well, thank you. And you can also watch Chris's extended interview on our YouTube channel. Check it out. Well, John Bon Jovi is being credited with saving a woman's life in Nashville. Surveillance video from Tuesday shows a woman standing on the ledge of a bridge. The rock star, who was filming a music video on the span, then approaches her to talk. He then pulls her back over the railing and embraces her before they walk off the bridge together. Now, police say the woman was taken to a hospital for treatment. Take my hand and we'll make it, I swear. I want to bring in now CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the last look at the national forecast. Grant, isn't that just a great message to leave our show on?
Yeah, it's an amazing story. It really is. Right place, right time, I guess, right? Let's talk about the national forecast here because we focused a lot on Francine, rightfully so. Ongoing flood concerns along with the threat for some severe weather and tornadoes today across the southeast. Meanwhile, nice dry weather continues across the northeast. Unseasonably hot weather up towards the midwestern states as we go through this afternoon. Another round of severe weather possible back into portions of the Great Basin and western Montana today, along with heavy rainfall. Dry, windy fire weather back towards portions of Colorado, Wyoming this afternoon. And then here comes another round of cooler temperatures invading portions of California into the Pacific Northwest. Alana, been great with you today. Have a great rest of your afternoon and morning.
Grant, I appreciate it. Good to be with you as well. Well, coming up next, an encore of CBS Mornings. This is CBS News 24/7.